Good morning. I wanted to give you the updates for Chapter 12. It's a pretty big chapter, so I may have to break this into two um, video recordings. So in this chapter, we're going to talk a lot about the roles of the different B vitamins in energy metabolism. Remember, vitamins were named in the order in which they were discovered alphabetically. So A was one of the first discovered, then B, then C. And what happened was when researchers realized that the coenzymes that were involved with energy metabolism were a whole bunch of different types, they had to give the subcategories of the B vitamins. So thus we have B1, B2, things like that. Then we're also going to talk about different minerals that are involved in energy metabolism and vitamins and minerals involved in bone health. So micronutrients again stand for small nutrients, and those small nutrients are vitamins and minerals. So here are the nutrients that are involved in energy metabolism and the nutrients that are involved in blood health. And again, I know there's quite a bit. My suggestion is to make some index cards, to make little flashcards, so you can try to understand the variations of the two. So let's talk about the B vitamins. The main function of the B vitamins in our body is to act as coenzymes. And what that means is that they assist the enzymatic responses that help break our food down. So they're highly involved in the energy cycle that occurs in the cell. So it's how we get energy from the food that we're eating. It requires B vitamins. And the problem is that there's when you don't get enough of those B vitamins, which in this country is actually very rare, those deficiencies can affect the brain, the nervous system, the GI system, any tissue that's metabolically active, which is every tissue in our body. And again, B vitamins are very well absorbed, and we typically have plentiful amounts in our food supply, so deficiencies are not common. So this gives a little concept map of some of the B vitamins that were required in energy metabolism. So carbohydrates, as you can recall from chapter 4, break down into monosaccharides. Those monosaccharides are what is absorbed in the bloodstream as glucose, and then that glucose enters the cell and goes to be part of the chemical intermediates that happen within the cell, in the mitochondria, things like ATP. And so once those are generated, we actually get our energy, if that makes sense. So when we think about thiamine, pantothenic acid, niacin, and biotin, those are the B vitamins primarily involved in carbohydrate metabolism. And again, B6 is big because it's getting the carbohydrate into the monosaccharide form. Lipids are quite important in our body as our concentrated source of energy, and they do require niacin. If you did the chapter 8 or 9 review, you may have recalled that niacin is a water-soluble vitamin that, if taken in high amounts, can actually help lower cholesterol. And so you can see that one of the reasons it does that is its role in converting lipids in our diet to fatty acids in our body. And again, all the B vitamins work on this except for B6. B6 again is primarily in carbohydrates and proteins, and then all of these are involved. And this is right in here, the Krebs cycle, the ATP cycle to get this. The energy that you get out is ATP. So the proteins get broken into the amino acids and requires these vitamins. And then again, we've got the thiamine, the B6, the B12, the folate, okay? And those are utilized in the cell and then make energy. Okay. The reason that amino acids are hooked into this is that, remember, we do not store amino acids. We can take the nitrogen off and have the kidney and liver excrete that, and then the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen shell acts to make a monosaccharide. So the only way the proteins are used as energy is when you take that nitrogen shell off. So our diet in North America is typically very adequate in B vitamins, and supplementation is not necessary. Most of the foods that we eat have actually been enriched or fortified with B vitamins. And again, if we have excess, these B vitamins are water soluble, so we can excrete those excess. One of the times you might notice that is after you take a vitamin mineral supplement, or maybe eat a cereal like Total or Raisin Bran that has a lot of those nutrients. You'll notice about 2 hours later that your urine is pretty yellow, and that is the riboflavin. So that yellow color, which is the extra credit for this week, that the picture on the home page, that is actually a picture of riboflavin. And it's named after the Latin word flavinus, which means yellow. So when you see that bright yellow in your pee, that's your body getting rid of riboflavin. Alcoholics are the only ones that tend to be deficient in B vitamins because there's a high amount of B vitamin metabolism happening to break alcohol down. In this country, when we have a kernel of wheat, and when we take off the bran and the germ, which are the most nutrient dense parts, the government requires that we put vitamins back on, and that's called enrichment. So when you look at the back of a box of crackers and the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour, that means that it's basically white flour with the vitamins and minerals sprayed back on. And again, they took the vitamin and minerals out because they took away the bran and the germ. Okay, and the other mineral that's added is iron. What's interesting is that we do not add fiber back, vitamin E back, or potassium. And we learned in the last couple chapters how important those nutrients are. Let's move on to talk about iodine. One of the major roles of iodine is to regulate the thyroid gland, which helps regulate metabolism. So again, iodide from the bloodstream supports those thyroid hormones, and that regulates our metabolic rate and our growth. So low levels of iodide can lead to goiter, and also if a mom has low levels of iodide during pregnancy, that can lead to creatism. There's a good picture in your book. This is a picture of goiter. You can notice that the thyroid gland becomes enlarged. So where do we get iodide? Well, it's interesting. Most of the iodide that we get in this country comes from our soil, which many experts feel has been depleted over the years of farming and the things that we've done. So our salt is enriched. So if you noticed when you picked up your last container of salt, you noticed that it's called iodized salt. Keep in mind, though, that people that use kosher salt or sea salt do not get iodide. And there's been some speculation that some of this, that the Americans may be suffering an iodide deficiency if they're getting all of their sodium from sea or kosher salt. Okay. So where do we get it? Again, salt, fish, milk, yogurt, and then these foods like Luna Bar and Soy Protein Bar are enriched. But you can see even one serving of fish is more than adequate. If you're getting a half a cup of yogurt, so a cup of yogurt a day, you're doing fine. So most people get plenty. All right, so moving into the B vitamins, and I'm going to go through these rather quickly. And again, I recommend that you put together some note cards to help you in studying for the quiz. So one of the thiamin's main role is to release energy from carbohydrates through its role as a coenzyme. What happens when you don't get enough thiamine is you get a disease called beriberi, weakness, loss of appetite, and again, this has to do with the role that B vitamins play in metabolism. One of the problems with the refining process that we do in this country is that it takes out a lot of the thiamine, and that's why thiamine is sprayed back on. One note, though, it's interesting, white rice, the vitamins are sprayed back on, and a lot of people rinse their rice before they cook it, and that actually rinses those water-soluble vitamins off. Brown rice is fine because those nutrients are inside the rice, but white rice, it's out on the outside. So how much do we need? Very little, 1.1 to 1.2 milligrams. Keep in mind that a gram is about the size of the pencil tip eraser. So, and this is a milligram, so it's 1,000 times smaller than that. So this is again why we call these micronutrients. They're needed in very small amounts. And again, women are getting enough, men get more than they need, but it's water soluble, so we pee out the extra. Where do we get it? Well, it's interesting. Pork is probably one of the highest levels of thiamine of all of our food sources. And then again, whole grains, wheat germ, that's that part of the wheat where the reproductive process of the kernel is, and you can actually buy wheat germ. Ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, because again, they're enriched. Refined grains, because they've been enriched. And then other things like green beans, milk, orange juice, organ meats, peanuts, beans, seeds. And here's a picture representing. And as you'll notice, these colors correspond to the food groups. So you can see on here that it's available in a wide variety of food groups, which is also why most people don't become deficient. All right, moving on to B2, or riboflavin. It is particularly important in fatty acid breakdown. It also supports the role of an antioxidant. And the deficiency causes inflammation of the mouth and tongue, dermatitis, cracking on the tongue, corners of the mouth, eye disorders, sensitivity to sun, confusion. And again, we don't typically see people become deficient unless they're alcoholics. And this is some pictures of deficiencies. How much do we need? About 1 milligram again, and the average intake is slightly greater than that. And as I mentioned, alcoholics are at increased risk. Where do we get it? Ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, because those vitamins are sprayed back on. The most naturally occurring source that we get is dairy foods. Also the enriched grains, because it's part of the one that goes back on. And then meats and eggs and dark green vegetables are pretty high. Keep in mind that it is destroyed by light, and so one of the things that to note is that milk that is stored in like the plastic jugs, opaque containers, are more likely to have a little bit less riboflavin than those stored in the paper, you know, the quart kind of boxes. So, and again, this is the one that's called the yellow vitamin, and that's that picture on the front of your news today. And again, riboflavin is derived from the Latin flavus, meaning yellow. Moving on to B3. Nicotinic acid, or nicotinamide, is the how niacin functions. Again, it's a coenzyme like many of those B vitamins, and the energy being used equals how much niacin coenzyme being used. So when we break energy down, we use B vitamins. And the deficiency is pellagra, which is rough or scaly skin, dermatitis, which is rough or scaly skin, diarrhea, dementia, and death. Not common in the United States. Only time it tends to be common is in alcoholics. How much do we need? A little bit more than B1 or B2, about 14 to 16. Again, very small amounts though overall. And average American doubles their intake, so we get plenty. Where do we get it? We also can get niacin from tryptophan, which is an amino acid. So foods that have protein tend to have niacin. Meat, fish, poultry, peanuts, asparagus, ready-to-eat cereals because it's added. And then actually coffee and tea are actually good sources of niacin. Now, the amount of niacin needed to help lower blood cholesterol is like 100 times the amount that we normally eat. So that would only be in supplement form. You really couldn't lower your cholesterol through nicotinic acid by eating the foods. So again, mega dosing, okay? One of the problems is that you can get a niacin flush, and that causes some itching, increased blood flow to the skin. All right, B5, pantothenic acid. Again, a coenzymes. It's available in lots of different foods, no upper limit. Some of the foods that are highest, sunflower seeds, mushrooms, peanuts, eggs, milk, meat. And you can see, especially total cornflakes, I don't really count, or Power Bar or Luna Bar, because those are all enriched. But if you look here, it's primarily in protein foods, dairy foods, but it's also in vegetable foods. What I find interesting is 5 mushrooms provides, you know, like half of your day, or a little short of that, third of your day. All right, B7. Intestinal bacteria can actually make this B vitamin. And deficiencies result in that scaly skin, changes in tongue or lips, just like we'd seen in the other B vitamins. Where do we get it? Protein foods, typically. And do most Americans get enough? Yes. And there's those protein foods. All right, I'm going to stop here, and I'll start up with B6 on the next screencast.